if you can prepare and learn the economics of how finances in the world work and how to like what are the actual factors and formulas and the math that you're doing behind doing those things, it really allows you to have that bullseye and that target out in front of you that you're shooting for.
In today's episode, Courtney and I sit down with 5-month agency owner Connor Metcalf, and we get in to the deets, what you need to be doing as a new agency owner to drive production, compensate your team, calculate the ROI, and what you should be focused on most between growth or retention. With that being said, let's start the show. Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We are your host, Michael and Courtney Weaver, and today we have a very special guest with us, Connor Metcalf. Connor, what's going on, my man?
Not much. Super pumped to be here. Excited to chat through everything. Feeling blessed. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. We're super pumped. So you are officially a little over 2 years into your agency owner career. And not to dive right in, but I'm going to dive right in, baby. So over the last 2 years, look, a lot of it typically feels like drinking out of a fire hydrant 24/7. But I would love to know maybe what's one of the learning lessons that you learned over the last 2 years that a newer agent, either just getting started or probably even struggling with the same thing, that you could help them with. Hey, this was my struggle, and this is how I overcome this in the first couple of years.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So to kick it off, I think one of the biggest learning experiences is like, it's so easy when you're a team member, especially on the sales side, to just focus on how do I produce, you have these sales processes, things like that. There's so many more things that go into the business, right? Like I just hired an onboarding welcome specialist, and it's like even just from the standpoint of like, okay, what are the steps to onboarding this team member? And then I think the biggest thing for me is like I'm big on the economic side of things. So like if you can prepare and learn kind of the economics of how finances in the world work and how to like we talk about scaling business, but like what are the actual factors and formulas and the math that you're doing behind doing those things. I think it allows you to really, when you are trying to scale and add team members and things like that, it really allows you to have that bullseye and that target out in front of you that you're shooting for. And so I would say that's probably the biggest thing is, obviously comfortable with sales, but how do you get in and train a service team member? How do you get in and onboard someone to the point where in 30 days they're up and running, doing certain things? And when you get into agency, you just spend a load of money on things and you're like, is this sufficient? How do I calculate ROI on this, right? How do I look at what's the most optimum way of getting leads and referrals and things like that? So I would say just work on figuring out the numbers. And, the first things first is just building a culture in your office. What culture do you want from day one?
Okay, I love that you bring this up because I am curious on your thought process in this, and I hear this a lot when we're talking about different problems that we have to solve in business. Can you prepare for how to onboard a new service person, or is that something that you just learn as you go?
Yeah, so I think if you're going to learn prior, like obviously you have to be in the situation to learn what works, what's efficient, whatnot. But I think if you have mentor agents that or if you come from a system, like I came from Brady Schroeder's office. He's in Springfield, very high level agent. He's got an incredible service team staff, right? But I was detached from that because I oversaw the sales side. So it's like what I'm doing before I'm getting into it, like when I'm in my training process to take over the agency, I'm asking him a million questions. Hey, what do you have to onboard this team member? What does this look like? What are the hiccups and the speed bumps in the road, right? What's the most difficult part about onboarding and training this person? So I think having some knowledge prior, asking really good questions to people who have done it at a really high level and continue to onboard service team members, I think that sets you up a little bit more, ahead of the curve of when you get into it and it doesn't work out that way or it doesn't look like that, to have kind of a more thoughtful process and dynamic thinking of like, okay, well, this didn't work, so what do I need to switch this out with, or how do we make this more efficient?
All right, so quick question.
I'm in this too. Like there's so many ways I'm like, oh, Connor, we're about to go.
Yeah, so, okay, let's go back to prior to agency days. if you could do it all over again, would you have done more of a hybrid model to learn the servicing aspect to set you up for more success in training service team members when you started agency? If you're looking at it now from a bird's eye view of what you've went through as a team member, would you have liked to have got some of that knowledge of servicing customers?
100%. Absolutely. I think that being a versatile team member, I think serves you in the long run in being an agent, right? Versatility is the name of the game. It's a pillar in our office. Like all of my sales guys, when they come in and I hire them and they're up and running, first thing that they're doing for the first couple weeks is they're working service cases, right? Because the reality is the processes that we have in sales, and when they're hungry, it's like doing something and learning about something you're more interested in versus like learning about poetry and English in high school. Like unless that's your thing, you're just kind of getting through it just to get through it. But the big thing is, I think, having that foundation. Once you have that foundation, it's a lot easier to move through the crawling stage to the standing and walking stage than to the jogging and running. So I 100% would validate. I would go back and be hybrid in a heartbeat versus just sales.
Okay. That's how I was taught. And I always thought it felt really good to be able to know how to do pretty much everything in the agency, to where one day, this would be worst case scenario, but if you had to get rid of everyone, it's like, I got this, baby. I know how to do everything. So, but it's a unique perspective. I don't know if we've never really had anyone on here. This came from, well, I'm sure we have, but we've never got into that conversation with just the sales role. And now you're training service. And so that was, it was just an interesting question I had. So,
so you bring up a mentor agent, and I would agree that it's great to have an example. I would also suggest having mentors that aren't just in the insurance industry, because their way of running business is very different. And I think it's great to get different opinions. But to your point, you said, I would ask the questions to mentor agents. I think the big struggle that a lot of people run into is they don't know what question to ask. So let's just spitball for a little bit. If we were to start agency, what questions should you be asking to mentor agents?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Really good. I would agree with that. I have a mentor outside of the industry, has been a mentor for me for the last 5 years. Very successful businessman. He's up out of Washington State. I go to him for a lot of different things. But I would say, if we're spitballing questions, right? Like, there's two ways you could go about it. You could go from the service side, or you go from the agency side. I think the first thing is, what does it look like from a culture standpoint? So like, I'm asking people how they're setting up culture, how they're hiring, what do they look for in their interviews, how are they selecting good candidates? Because, right, like I want to be the CEO of the business. I don't want to sit down. I want to look at big picture. I want to look at scale. I want to look at teamwork. I want to look at strategy, processes, things like that, growth, retention. So I think the first thing is, I'm asking, what does your hiring process look like? How long does it take for you to prospect someone that you're hiring? And what does it look like when you feel like you're at max capacity and you have a team that you fully hired? How do you hire the person if you find a rock star? Like, where does that come from? I think the other things that I'm looking at too is, like, you get into agency, right? And you think you're immediately making all this, financial, this money, and it's
We're
just
all
flowing.
laughing.
Yeah, it's growing off the tree, in the backyard. And it's like, no, there's a small margin that you get to work with in the beginning if you don't have a bunch of, financial capital stored up. So I'm talking to them, hey, on a slim financial budget, how do we scale? Like, what does that look like? Are you focused more on retention so that we can get that compound and sustainable? Or are you going full out, let's get growth, right? What does your team structure look like? Are you doing 2 service, 2 sales? So that's kind of where my mind goes on those things initially.
Yep.
And then to kind of piggyback on that, I'm looking at, like, how do you calculate what is a successful month ROI? How do you do that off of certain lead sources, right? What's your cost? This is something that I've learned over the last 5 months, is like, how are we diving into my cost per bind? So if I'm purchasing internet leads or paid search, like, how do I know what is a good range for me to spend to get how we're paid as the agent in the agency? Like, how do I know what that range is that's an acceptable range for me to continue to pay this, so that I can continue to scale and multiply that out for my team?
These are so
these are really great.
Good. I love these questions. So I'm going to go back a little bit because I would pick any of these questions. What's profitable and how fast can we get there? What's the biggest lever that you pull that actually generates the biggest jumps in your business? What's a hurdle that you ran into that you didn't see coming that almost took you out? Like these are things that I would want to pay attention to. But you said something in the beginning that I want to kind of just dissect a little bit. You said, I want to be the CEO of my business. I'm curious, what does that look like for you? Because it's very different on a lot of different people.
Totally. So when I think CEO, I think a couple of different things off the top of my mind. Like I'm recruiting and hiring, right? I have the person in place to train those new hires. Like that was my role at Brady's office. He would train them on certain foundational pillars, but then from the sales standpoint and working, leads and process and call and things like that, like that fell on me. So having that person in place. So recruiting and hiring. I think the second thing is really working on the functionality of the business. Like, what does it look like? Like being on top of the business, not so much in the business with hands-on, making sales and things like that. So I think really having the processes in place and continually analyzing those processes and looking at like what's working, what's not. For me, it's really important to come in after a weekend and have a game plan on Monday morning for our meeting from 8 to 9. We meet every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 a.m. First thing that we do is we talk all through service stuff. So my service team lead, he's getting the whole office aligned on what service there is, right? This new lady that I just hired, she's going to be onboarding, dealing with new customer, but then she's also new business underwriting. So any new business, she needs to know what there is. We're going through an Excel spreadsheet, things like that. And then also, coaching, role playing, things like that. I think that's important to do every day. So coaching, hiring, recruiting, and then just looking at how do we make this thing more profitable and scale. But for us to do that in a really organic and holistic way, like we have to have good processes to connect with our customers. So how do we deepen those relationships, build the rapport, so that we can actually compound this growth faster and more sustainably through having those retention pieces in play. So
you are over 2 years in. Are you there now, or how far away is this version of the CEO that you're attaining? How far is that?
Yeah. So, and just to clarify, like I've only been an agent for 5 months. I started December 1st, 2024. I was a team member for 18 months.
Oh,
so
dang.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 months in.
Okay.
We're drinking out of a fire hydrant. Let's go. Okay, we're
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
This whole podcast just shifted
Okay.
dramatically,
Yeah.
Connor.
Okay. Yeah.
Love it.
This is great. So
Okay.
you've been in the industry
Okay,
for
got it.
two years, but you've owned the business now for 5 months.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Having a lot of
Okay.
fun. Having a lot
All
of
right.
fun.
I just sat deeper into my chair. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Same question though. When you're looking at this version, because this is where you're going, this is where you want to be an agency. How far are you from that?
So I'll be honest, since December, I wrote 3 big life cases. I'm having lots of conversations with customers, just getting to know them because I inherited a book, talking a lot about the investment side of things, IPS. So I'm still hands-on in those things, and I think I always will be because they're passions of mine. I would say actually we're pretty good right now, being 5 months in, leading into like what that looks like to be the CEO. I would probably, if I were to timeline, I'd say like 18 months. I'll be like full-fledged, not removed from it, but like overseeing everything where we've got the people in the right seats, in the places where they're going to them. So right now we're in that process of really building that out. Like, who's your touch point first, right? How do you proactively take this into your hands? If you don't know, this answer, where are you going in the system first? Or who are you calling from support? Okay, didn't get the answer, confused. Now we're going to this person in the office. So I would say we're probably 7 months. I would say at the year mark, we'll get to that point. 18 months, I really think between 18 months and 2 years, we'll be at that spot where it's like full-fledged CEO.
Heck yeah.
Okay, so you're in the 5-month seat. This completely changes my questions.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the mentor. What's the question that you need answered right now? It's 5 months in.
Yeah.
What's the biggest question that's looming over you?
Um, so I think the big thing right now is like I've always been someone that has been really risk tolerant. Like I know, like I feel comfortable taking big risks. I think the big thing is like right now, I just hired on my onboarding specialist. By June, I want to have a third salesperson to have 5 people in my office. I would just say like if you were to go a certain route, if we were to just categorize it on the most basic level, retention versus growth, like how are you timelining that out? Like I'll give you the dynamic of my office. So I have one team member that I inherited from the previous agent, been in the industry for 23 years, knows every customer in our book. Taylorville is about a town of 10,000 people, knows everybody in the town. He's been awesome, right? Then I have a team member that I trained at my old office that is on the sales side of things. I brought him over, trained him for 8 months, and then he was able to come and join my team. Hired a guy on the sales side that is brand new. 5 months in, he's crushing it. I think and then just hired, Aaron, who's our onboarding specialist. Like from here, I'm trying to figure out, do I just ride this to the year? Like, what does that look like? What moves would you do if you were in that situation? What steps would you take? And the reason why I bring up the risk factor is like I'm leveraging a line of credit to
Yep.
expand that out, just because when I look at the returns a year from now, right, and I look at what that looks like for each team member at the level that they're producing right now and even more, it just makes sense to me. But I guess I would just ask, like, what is that? What would you speculate on, and what would be your framework to coach me through that?
That's a good question.
It is a great question, and we could get into the vision of your agency, what you want it to be. High level answer based off of your question is I'm a huge fan in the early years of grow, baby. Sales cures all, now it's a double-edged sword because here's the thing: retention is extremely important.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of onboarding every customer if possible, like 75% at a minimum of onboarding brand new customers. With your existing book of business, you need to have a play over like the first night, which you're 5 months in, so whatever, but over the first 90 to 180 days of contacting every single one of those customers, because most of those customers have a significant amount of brand loyalty because they've been with your company for so long with the old agent, whereas brand loyalty is starting to decrease throughout time. So I would be making that contact, initial engagement with the customer to introduce yourself. Hey, this is who we are. You have any questions? Like just to start that relationship. But without a doubt, most of my time and energy is going to be focused on how do I grow this agency as much as possible over the next 3 to 5 years.
I would adjust your comp plan. I don't know what it looks like for your service person that you just brought on that's doing onboarding and doing underwriting. I would structure that in a way that she's incentivized to make sure that your book of business, your current book of business, is coming in and meeting with you, or you're meeting virtually over the phone. We're just not big fans of over the phone interviews.
Yeah, in person or virtual. So, and then the other thing is when you're talking about a new agency where you're at, and you may or may not be doing this, but automatically including financial services production as part of a requirement for your team members. Because the biggest thing as a new agent that you really need to, this growth retention doesn't matter, is you have to understand how you're paid. Right? Like you need to study that comp plan inside and out and understand how to maximize your bonuses, whether it's quarterly bonuses or on your annual bonus. And so once you understand how you're compensated as an agent, your comp plan back into that. But as a new agent, without a doubt, most of the feeling you have right now with your excitement, your energy,
you don't know what you don't know yet.
Yeah,
it's your advantage.
That's exactly right. So
Sure.
grow. Like everything you said around the vision of a CEO, a lot of agents, like I just did a 6-week class with 3 of the best agents in the country with State Farm, and they all, like basically their version of CEO and where they're at today, 7 years, 9 years, 15 years later, is they're recruiting. they have someone training or they train, they're working on their business, they're coach, like that's what they do. So like your version of what you want your vision to look like is what a lot of agents, I believe, want to look like. I think that it also just takes longer. So patience is part of this process in insurance. This is not a get rich quick. It is a get rich for sure if you set it up the right way. And so you said 18 months earlier. I love that. But at 18 months, if it's not the version you're expecting, don't be too hard on yourself, because so many times as business owners, we overestimate what we can get done in a year and underestimate what we can get done in 5 years, man. And so I love you have that 18 to 24 month vision for yourself and be super focused on that. Be narrowing it down to the 3 things a quarter that you need to be doing and that your team need to be doing to help you get there, and track it on a quarterly basis. If you've never, we're saying a lot of information right now, but if you've never read the book, The 12-Week Year, highly recommend that book. That book changed my career and just thought process on how to run a business, how to run my life. But when you break everything down into quarters and focus on just 3 things, what 3 things are significantly going to move the needle over the next 90 days, whether it's production, whether it's bringing on a new person, whatever it is, I'd be breaking goals down into 3-month variables and back into that 18 to 24 months. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's I really appreciate that. I like that. So before I got into State Farm, I owned a consulting business. And that's really kind of what I would look at with teams and businesses and churches and things like that, is how are we sectioning out those goals over a periodic timeline that allows us to kind of step up to the next level. So, and just to remind me here, Michael, that book was 12-Week Year.
The 12-Week Year. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
And I also dive into that on the book I wrote, Game Changer, taking your insurance agency to the next level. But 12-Week Year, I'd recommend reading that because it does a really good job. And then I use that context of that book and how to actually break it down into an insurance agency. But either way, so that's really good. But to answer your initial question, look, we're in the business, we're in the people business. So retention, if you can keep your retention low, like I guess high retention, so 80%, 85% as a new agent is really good in growth mode, even if it drops down to 75%, right? Like we always had a goal of 80%, and that's basically where we hung in our new market, even though we were growing at $1 million plus a year in premium. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest threshold you need to look at, is what was the average of your retention, because you have data that can back that. And then you can expect your retention to lower a little bit because of new business. So new business growth, they're not as loyal to the brand. They're more subject to price volatility in the future, right? But if you can keep your retention at pretty much where it was at, it may drop a little bit, but be focused on growth, and then multi-lining the heck out of your book of business. Like those are easy. That's easy production with people that already know you, like you, trust you. And so the low-hanging fruit of calling customers that currently don't have financial services products, calling customers that have good limits but don't have umbrellas, like these are all low-hanging fruit. And so just getting in the habit of creating maybe like even your onboarding specialist could be a customer retention specialist, to where part of his or her job is every month you're calling current customers on their fire renewal, for example, like their homeowner's renewal, just to have an appointment either in person or virtually, go over their current policies, make sure their discounts are being applied, but also deepen that relationship and get into financial services conversations, which can open the door for you, Connor. It kind of sounds like that's the agency that you're running, is your front line, is your team of having those. And then if they find something big, they pass it on to you. We haven't had that conversation. That's just what I'm grasping so far.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. That's how we like it here. So
is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that was so good. I really appreciate obviously the book recommendations, and then just breaking that down. I think, that's the hard part for me, is trying to, I'm the kind of person where I typically am a big dreamer, thinker, big picture kind of person, but I really do like an outline first. So like, give me some numbers. It's funny getting into agency, and you'll talk to these sales leaders and these, agency VPs and things like that. And they're like, well, what are your numbers and what are your goals? And I'm like, I have no clue. I have no clue what to expect. I have no clue where to shoot. Like I could overshoot and you're going to look at me like I'm crazy, or I could way undershoot. And now you're looking at me, you're like, is this the right guy? So I think having that outline and that skeleton first to then fill in the picture is really, really important for me. So I appreciate you sharing all that with like the retention on old business, make sure we're staying within that range on those customers that have brand loyalty, right? And then how to stair step into, finding that low hanging fruit with them and putting that process with the onboarding specialist, right? I think that was super, super important. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, man, and like your top 200 is typically going to pay about 80% of your income. So just so those are the customers that you'd want to meet with every single year. Like top 200,
sure.
It's typically that 80-20 split in income on premium if you add it up.
Yeah.
And so pay attention to that. But again, the biggest thing is just understanding your comp plan, right? So understanding the bonus that you get every year and backing into that on a quarterly basis and holding the team accountable to that. So the biggest thing is, and this is with all insurance professionals, if you can just become the master at auto fire life, you are going to do great. Now, I know that there's some other products. There's lots of other products out there. But if you can master those three things, because P&C always is going to be part of that residual income that we all want, right? That's why we got into the business. But the financial services is how you increase the retention. It's how you help customers, but also it's how you're going to maximize your compensation structure. And so just making sure that the team is really good with that. And when we get really good with that, then let's go on to another product. But I'm a big believer in the Three Kingsmen Auto Fire Life, baby.
Yeah. Come on. Love it.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. Can I ask just one more question on that?
What's up?
So like per team member, like what I'm trying to figure out right now, and obviously there's a lot of factors of like how much am I spending on, marketing, factors to determine that ROI. So let's say I spend, $3,000 a month on leads, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would be like a justifiable expectation for my sales team members on the PNC side to get to that point where it's like it makes sense?
Great question. So are you spending $3,000 a month as an agency or $3,000 per person a month?
Agency,
and you have two sales reps right now?
Yep.
Okay, so you're spending roughly $1,500 per rep?
Yes.
Okay. And we can go into even more than so ultimately you would want their base, right? So what their base is, and that's what I always figure it off of. So I look at, let's make this easy on me. So let's pretend you're paying a $36,000 base. Okay. That means that $3,000, that means they would need to at least produce $3,000 in premium. This is if you want to break even on a monthly basis, right? So every agent's a little different. Every business owner is a little different. Like me personally, my break even point was the 6-month mark. So I structured my compensation plan to where I would be a little in the hole on the first 6 months, but at that first renewal, we would typically be breaking even or making money, right, on the auto renewal. And then at the 12-month mark, when the fire renewed, we're way in the profit margin, and that's not including bonuses. I base it all off of just straight premium produced. So in that example, most agents are going to want their team producing a minimum of $20,000 in premium a month, with probably a goal of $30,000 to $40,000 in premium a month. So that would always be my minimum expectation of working. So how you get there, Connor, because now some people are going to be like, well, okay, how do you get to $20,000 a month in premium, right? So $20,000 a month in premium is taking your average auto premium for the 6 months and backing into that. So if your average car premium is $500 a car, right? How many cars are they going to have to write, or would you be okay with? So if they write, in that example, 20 cars at $500, that would be $10,000 in premium a month, right? So that'd be $1,000 in commission off of 10%. Fire, same way. What's your average homeowners or fire premium that you're producing? Does that make sense? And I recommend basing everything off of P&C production from this is what you need to write. Now, financial services is part of that, but financial services averages are much harder to mathematically equate because new producers typically don't produce the premium that they will 6 months a year from now. So I base everything off of what I need someone to produce. I'm going to hold them accountable to on the P&C production standpoint, and then the production that I hold them accountable to on the financial services premium is basically like icing on top of the cake. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah. 100%. Appreciate you breaking that down.
Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Super helpful. Yeah. I think I was just trying to figure out the window, right, of like what do I need to be asking these guys to make? Like I have a pretty simple commission structure, and there's financial services that play into that, multiplying out the PNC. But when I look at the numbers of it, I'm still trying to get a gauge of like if we're looking to scale and grow this, and then obviously take into the factor of like what does it look like at the renewals, things like that. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a gauge on what a healthy number looks like.
Yeah, and you're only 5 months in right now, so the 6-month mark will be very interesting to see what your lapse can was on the 6. So that's something you're going to want to track from 6 months ago, how much of it leaves you. And then you'll see another leave at the 12-month mark, and they may not be very big, but this will be really good for you because right now you're pretty much just in like the planning, hoping stage. Like, okay, I hope that we retain 90% of the business over the first 6 months or 12 months. You have no mathematical data to really be able to back into an equation to figure out, okay, what does my comp plan need to be, or when am I breaking even on these team members, unless you're making them produce up front the amount that you're paying them, which is totally fine, like profit seats. But right now you need time on your side to really give yourself the data from a CEO standpoint to be like, okay, this is when I'm breaking even, or this is when I'm making money. Here's my retention on our new business. Does that make sense?
For sure.
The biggest thing I would tell you from the CEO standpoint is when you're trying all of these things, and you do have this inexperience that is an advantage because you don't know what works and what doesn't. Document as much as you can on what you went through in this process. The retention strategies, the phone calls that you made, the sales processes, the lead sources. Right now, you are trying and seeing what actually works and what gives you the biggest jump. The issue that we run into is that we just keep running and we never take time to pause and reflect and go, okay, so 6 months ago, what was I actually doing that moved the needle? So I would structure that in your planning process too, to where you're talking about, hey, I need some time to work on the business. That's what this means, is you actually go back and you look at all of the strategies that you used and all of the data, and you reflect on both of those and go, okay, so moving forward, this worked, this didn't. And you have to give it time to grow. A lot of times agencies will move too quickly. They'll try something for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then they'll switch, and your team gets so freaking confused, and you don't have enough data to go, this worked or this didn't. You have to let seeds grow a little bit. So that would be my only kind of suggestion when you're going through this process. Document as much as you can and plan out days where you take a step back and you go, okay, this worked and this didn't, because you're the only one, you're the leader in the seat, that you get to make those decisions of, if I have $3,000, is it best to go into this vendor for internet leads, or should I shift it over completely to this? Should I hire somebody instead? So these are the decisions that I would just build out time that you can kind of go, okay, I need a break from answering the phone 52 times in an hour, and I need to actually look at this.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's a good reminder for me, because I don't like slowing down a whole lot. So appreciate that mindful reminder, Courtney.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And I'll share these two things. So they just came to me. So the two things that I wish I would have done differently when we started agency was, I wish I would have held the inside the service team. All right, service is actually inside sales, right? So they're the ones that need to be really good at relationship building, really good at taking the inside calls and turning those into opportunities, whether it's life insurance, Google reviews, referrals, appointments, whatever you want. But they do need to be held accountable to some type of inside sales activity, right? And then the second thing, and this is on the life insurance and financial services side, is later on in my career, I started holding accountable to the premium versus the application, and that changed our agency significantly, right? Because then you don't have to worry about the selling on price. You don't, like, they're focused on premium, which is going to equate to better conversations. And quite frankly, premium is how you're paid as an insurance agency owner, not on apps. And so that was one thing that I wish I would have done earlier on in my career, is P&C is really easy to work backwards on an average premium standpoint. So still holding them accountable to apps, because that's a clear target. But life insurance, hey, I need you to write a minimum of $500 a month in paid life insurance premium every single month. Meaning that if you write 5 policies at $100 a month, that's the $500. If you write 10 at $50, that's the 500. But no matter what, like you're accountable or your expectation is $500 a month in paid life insurance premium or financial services premium. That would be one thing I would highly recommend.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I was actually just talking with my sales leader about that because we're obviously outside of, the time frame beginning of the year, which is so crazy and crucial and go, 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 go. And we were kind of looking at the premium breakdown for the next 9 months of the year and kind of what goals and targets are for each team member and the agency here specifically. And that was a big emphasis is like, hey, how do we look at the premium versus, because for the first 3 months, I mean, we had 47 apps, which was which was really cool. Super proud of my guys and just their ability to receive coaching and like apply it, be bold in that. But looking at like, okay, how are we more diverse and versatile in our abilities to have, let's just have this one need play right now where we're taking care of the car loan, right? Or versus like, how do we have the life needs conversation where we're breaking everything down, putting together a plan versus, hey, I have someone who's high net worth. Let's talk infinite banking about them,
Yep. I love that, man. And if you need like one simple thing, just have your team start every conversation at $1 million in death benefit. Even on like even on the loan play that you just referenced, if they just start like my play on that's the debt payoff protector plan. But if you just start the conversation at $1 million and you just say, hey, I just want you to recommend $1 million in death benefit to every customer you talk to. Watch what happens.
I love that.
Because when we did that, our average case went from $125,000 in benefit to over $500,000 in benefit. That premium right there typically equates to more than $50 a month per paid life insurance policy, even on like a 20-year term life policy. So like that automatically is going to take care of some of that premium expectation that you put on them. And it's just an easy target that they're like, hey, every person that we talk to in our agency, Connor just recommends that we recommend $1 million in death benefit at a minimum. Because life insurance is like anything else. Okay, $100,000 is $15, like $100,000 benefit. $500,000 is $45. Well, or $1 million is $45. Most people would rather pay the $45 for the $1 million than the $15 for the $100,000.
For sure. Oh, that's a great point. I'm gonna start doing that.
Do it,
Morning
baby.
Meeting tomorrow. We're talking.
Let's freaking go!
All right, man. This has been fantastic. Obviously, you're 5 months into your journey, so if anybody wanted to watch you, connect with you, maybe just watch your journey from afar, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can just touch base with me on Instagram. So it's cmetty38. That's CMETTY 38. Pretty responsive on it. Love chatting with people over Instagram. And then obviously I'd get you connected with my cell and whatnot. So love people, love chatting, love growing. So if you want to reach out, hit me up there.
Let's go, man. This has been fantastic. Yes, you shared a lot of great information and you asked a lot of really great questions.
I am so excited because your first year is just your gangbusters year. That's where you literally are like, you said, I don't even know what's possible. It's the greatest gift because you don't. There is no ceiling. So go for whatever it is, no matter how big or meaty or scary it is. My only advice is run right freaking towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Just go
as hard
full
as you can.
Steam. How do I make this bigger, better, make more people money, make myself more? Just go. It's the coolest thing, and you'll watch that compound throughout your career.
Yep.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for having me on here, you guys, and thanks for all your input. I got a great coaching session here, which I love.
I know. This is so much fun.
I loved it. Thanks again.
Yeah, Connor, thank you. And for all of those of you tuning in today, thank you so much for your time. As always, time and attention are our most important assets. We appreciate you spending time with us today on The Buzz. Go out, make it great. Connor, thanks again, brother.